Hey, how's everybody doing today? I know everybody's on mute, so I know you all answered that collectively, but I just can't hear you. So thank you, Molly, for the introduction. I'm really excited to jump in and talk about, some of the challenges in Fulton County and kind of how we've really started to think outside the box and be strategic around some of our staffing initiatives, um, especially in using some virtual options, which I'll talk about today. One correction, just how fast things move in a school district. I've actually started a new position as the principal of OC Elementary School as of July 1st. But I was heavily integrated into this work, and I'm still keeping contact with our talent management department as kind of a principal liaison about how we can continue to spread the good word about some of these strategies that I'll discuss today. So just to get started and give you a picture of Fulton County as a whole, we're a very unique district, and I'm sure everybody's nodding their head that they're unique too, but geographically, we have some real challenges. So if you look at this map, and it's coming up a little blurry, but everything in red is Fulton County Schools. And I'm sure as some of you have paid attention to, the news over the last few years, with the cheating scandal in the Atlanta Public School District. So the Atlanta Public School District is the area on the map that is marked in gray. And so we are completely geographically divided by the city of Atlanta and that school system. So it presents some very interesting challenges for us geographically. One, we do have urban schools, rural schools, and suburban schools. So, that alone, we have a number of kids coming in with different challenges, different levels of socioeconomics across the district. And so if you look at us, you'd probably say, and it's on here, it's on the slide, that Fulton County is very diverse. But that can be somewhat misleading. As a overall district, we are very diverse, but in the southern part of the county, those schools are predominantly African American. That's where a lot of our schools that are very high risk and high needs. You're looking at schools that are 100% free and reduced lunch. And some of those schools were even threatened with state takeover a couple years ago because of chronic underperformance. Then if you move to the north part of the district, you move to predominantly white schools, much more affluence. And those are really the North Fulton suburbs that have some of the highest tax brackets in the state of Georgia. And so those are some of the schools that, you may or may not have heard of: Northview High School, Chattahoochee High School, Roswell High School, that are consistently in the top 100 schools nationally. So very high performing schools in the north part of the district. As you move into the central area of the district, kind of the Sandy Springs, Dunwoody area, and really getting closer to the city of Atlanta, that's where you actually start to get into a lot of our schools that have diversity within them. So Black, Hispanic, large Asian populations coming from a range of areas: Indian, Korean, Chinese, Japanese. So overall diverse, but really depending on the school and kind of where the school is located, that diversity can change. As you can see, 105 schools serving over 97,000 students. We are the largest chartered district in the state of Georgia, so we've moved towards a local autonomy model where we're really giving schools the opportunity and the power to make a lot more localized decisions. Some of those being around staffing, but a lot of things around just strategic initiatives and programs. Over 14,000 employees, 7,100 of those are certified teachers. So that's Atlanta in a nutshell, or the Fulton County Public School District and Atlanta in a nutshell. So what are some of the things we're facing? I showed you a map of Fulton County, and I talked a little bit about Atlanta Public Schools, and I know Molly mentioned that there are 16 local districts that are really pulling from us because we're surrounded. We are bisected by the hub of Georgia, being that large metropolitan area in Atlanta. But not all of those districts are at the same level. You know, I'd be remiss if I compared us to some of the other ones just because of scope and the size and the demographics. While we're surrounded by some other small districts, they don't match the size of us or the student demographics by any stretch. But there are some other very high performing districts that we border. Cobb County Schools, Gwinnett County Schools, Cherokee County, which is a smaller school district but still very high performing. That's borders the North Fulton area, and Forsyth County Schools, which is also on the borders the North Fulton area. Those are very high performing districts. Molly mentioned we're the 4th largest district in the state of Georgia. Cobb County and Gwinnett are both bigger than us. They're both pretty comparable in terms of performance. And so there's a lot of choice out there for teaching candidates. And there's schools that look the same. When you start to look at Cobb County, Gwinnett, Cherokee, and Forsyth, they have a lot of schools that look like our high performing schools. What they don't have are the numbers of schools that we do that are at risk. One of our chronically underperforming schools, Banneker High School, you know, has had a number of leadership changes, has some real social and emotional challenges that the students come in with. And, you know, while some of these districts may have 1 or 2 schools like that, we have, really, you could probably say close to 50% of our schools are dealing with those kind of socioeconomic and social and emotional issues. And so it really presents challenges. Now, in addition to these high performing districts, we're also surrounded on the southern and central parts by counties like DeKalb, APS that I mentioned, Clayton County, which although they lost their accreditation years ago, have really made a strong comeback and have made some drastic improvements. And they have schools that do start to look like some of our at-risk schools. So we have competition for talent across the board. And what we're really starting to see and where we've really focused is what do our post-first bell vacancies look like? I think we've made huge pushes to get schools staffed earlier in the summer. But what we're still seeing are these lagging vacancies that take place after first bell, after kids have arrived, and then they stay vacant because the school year starts, the focus shifts to, you know, the day-to-day of school, and principals and the district have kind of pulled the gas off of making sure that we have people in those positions. As I'm sure many of you are probably dealing with, we're having a decrease annually in the number of applications from highly qualified applicants. We've made some strides in hiring non-traditional teachers and working on alternative pathways to certification, but we're a long way away from where we need to be. And although we're still having a high number of applicants, the number of those people who are qualified and ready to move into some of our tougher to staff schools or our tougher to staff positions, which I'll talk about in a minute, continues to decrease, and that's a real problem. Because of our geographics, our candidates, when they enter our teaching pool, which if you have questions about, I'll give you my contact information to talk about how we manage our central hiring process. They can indicate their preference of teaching site. So if they want to, you know, choose an area in the central part of the district, the south part of the district, or the north part of the district, they can make that preference, which actually cuts off a principal's view from candidates who have indicated they're not interested in working in some of those other areas. Like I mentioned, I would say probably 50% of our schools are considered hard to staff. And we've actually engaged in some other initiatives around moving some of our high-performing teachers from different parts of the district to some of our low-performing schools. That's really had mixed results. It's created some cultural divides, you know, and some of those schools are really dealing with some pretty hard to handle problems. And so some of those teachers, although they've made the commitment to go down there for 1 or 2 years, it has not had the wave effect that I think we were hoping for. So just to give you some additional context about where we are as a district, and I think this really starts to play into, you know, blended learning spaces and virtual learning, is we're a personalized learning district. And you can see the goals of our personalized learning initiative. But what we really started, where we started with this personalized learning journey, was with technology. And you know, that may not be the best way to start the initiative, but that's where we really pushed in, was by providing schools with one-to-one devices and access to technology tools so that they can engage and provide students with a range of resources aimed at differentiating and personalizing their instruction. So there's been a huge push. Schools do have access to a lot of technology resources. We've made major infrastructure improvements to make sure that there's wireless capability for all the one-to-one devices. And so this is great context to understand that our students and our teachers have a lot of experience working, you know, in kind of blended learning spaces in their schools. So, you know, as we started to think about what are some different options, and we started to think about virtual staffing, we've had a huge push in Fulton County to provide some of those rigorous opportunities for students in high school. So one of the big key pieces of data that we've been monitoring as a district is how many of our students are enrolled in college preparation courses, either through dual enrollment, which a lot of those courses are now using blended space, or a lot of our AP courses. And so there's been a huge focus at the school level to push students into more of these blended learning spaces. In addition to some of the advanced, you know, college preparation work, we've integrated a lot of technology to make sure we're providing credit recovery options. And so we really had a huge explosion of students being able to engage in blended learning spaces and really start to teach those 21st century learning skills that are needed, and allow kids to access a lot of where our colleges are moving. You know, I'm currently enrolled at the University of Georgia in a doctoral program, and all the classes are blended. And so, you know, we're preparing kids and trying to prepare kids for the reality that exists after high school. So what did we do? You know, as we started to think about how we were going to staff these remaining these lagging vacancies, because our big concern is, you know, a lot of those vacancies were being left open for months, sometimes all year. And as we all know, substitute teachers, sometimes you get what you pay for. And some of our high-risk schools, the inability to get subs at all was really taking a toll on the workloads of teachers who are having to shift coverage. And so students are missing instructional time. So we started with data. We pulled all of our schools and we started to look really in April, May, June, July at our schools with the highest number of open vacancies. And what we started to do was look at the areas with the highest needs. So those core subject areas, you know, really STEM focused, a lot of our math and science positions at the high school level, and then even down to some of our middle and high school, the middle school level, those math and science positions, as well as some of the other tough ones. You know, Latin is a world language that we continue to offer across the district, but is a very difficult position to staff. We still struggle to find Spanish teachers. And so there's a lot of staffing needs that we had. And so we jumped into our data and identified some of our high priority targets to look for some potential options around virtual staffing. So we found some early adopters. We pulled in our building principals and we reached out and said, look, you have a lot of vacancies. You know, your scores are struggling, especially for some of these schools. Creekside High School, Langston Hughes, and Tri-Cities Those are some of our chronically underperforming schools. And what we were seeing is that they were not able to staff those positions for long periods of time. And so students who are already coming in with learning challenges, or like I said, social and emotional challenges, were going months without an actual certified teacher in the classroom. Northview is a little bit of a different example. That's actually the highest performing high school in Fulton County Schools. Scored over 100 on our state report card, but they had a Latin vacancy. And so, we reached out to them because we knew they did not have anyone to fill that Latin position, and they had a full Latin program from Latin 1 all the way up through AP course offerings. So we found these early adopters and, really started jumping into how are we going to implement some virtual staffing solutions for them so they could fill these vacancies. As they started to early adopt, we jumped into support mode. And one of the things that we realized we had to do as we looked at a partner to engage with us in this work was map out a process. As you know, all big organizations have their red tape. And so we started creating implementation guides and FAQs for our building principals. Because of our structure, we do make a lot of the hiring decisions at the school level, and we grant our principals that autonomy. So we really needed to jump in and up the communication about what the virtual staffing options were, what they were offering, and what that meant for them, and what were some precursor questions that they needed to start to think about around budget, around staffing, to make sure that they could jump in and use some of these options. The implementation guide was literally a step-by-step outline of what they needed to do, who they needed to talk to in the district from the HR perspective, from the budget perspective, from the position control perspective, with very clear timelines with our virtual staffing partner as well for their runway to get a teacher in the classroom. We laid all of that out in very Fultonized language. And that was a huge support from our partner. And I'll talk about proximity learning and the great work that they've done. But there was such a two-way bridge of communication where they could really jump in and talk about what they needed to do and make that fit within our Fulton processes so that our principals could do this in a seamless way. As we moved through last year and started to move towards this year, one of our big focuses was to reduce transition and make sure that principals were thinking about this more strategically. So we set hard start dates for fall and spring. So one of the things we quickly found as we created this implementation guide is you needed about a 2 to 4 week runway to do this the right way. And more likely 4 weeks based on some of our Fulton County processes. So we really set hard deadlines that if you were going to choose this virtual staffing option from proximity learning, that you start that and have those people in place on day one. And if you made that decision that those people would be in place for a year-long class for the remainder of the year, and that you would not try to then find another teacher to refill, you would stay to reduce the amount of transition on those kids. For semester-long courses, we gave principals the option to staff either at the beginning of fall or spring semester. We did limit the scope based on the data that we were looking at, where our vacancies were, and not that proximity learning couldn't provide it, but just based on our own, how we run our schedules, we did a real focus on core content, subjects, and world language, which were also high impact for us in terms of our state reporting. But we also aimed it and pulled it back to just middle and high school so that it worked within their scheduling parameters. As we got into the nitty-gritty, there were some things that really started to stick out. One, we did require that all of the schools have a full-time paraprofessional who worked in the lab space or the blended space with the students. And so we really worked hard with our schools to start making that staffing decision early. So they actually collapsed the open vacancy, used part of that money to hire a high quality a high quality paraprofessional to work in the classroom with the virtual teacher. Proximity learning provided training for this individual, which was a huge asset. So they could come in and actually, provide that blended support as proximity learning was providing the certified teacher. We had to make sure that we had a paraprofessional in the room to supervise the students, help them through technological glitches, and really manage the classroom. As we jumped into school-based supports, proximity learning really jumped in and helped us out. So we set forth, and it was in the implementation guide, that we had a clear liaison of the program on campus, so that as issues arise from parents or if contact needed to be made from the central office to the school, that we knew who to go to and who was leading this work. We were able to adjust and make sure that the course offerings matched our individual school bell schedules. Because of our charter district, our schools are not all on one bell schedule. So we had some that were on a 4x4 block. We had others on an AB block. We had some that were on a 6, 7, or 8 period day. But proximity was able to accommodate that. The next big step, and where we really worked on the back half of last year, was IT integration. There were a lot of questions about how grades would be recorded, how grades would be communicated. And so proximity really worked with our student information system department to make sure that we could set up a live feed, as we weren't using the same learning management system. And so what that did allow is for a seamless transfer of student data, so that teachers, administrators, parents, and students could monitor their progress using the proximity learning solution, as well as in our district data systems. So was it successful? We've built some strong connections in some of our Title I and challenging schools. Some of the benefits of the virtual staffing was the ability to access information. In some of these schools that were high risk, there was also high absenteeism. So students who missed school had the ability to go in and jump in and review a recording of the class. And as we started to look at some of our standardized assessment scores, we saw that within some of the schools, our students in the virtual staffing solutions performed better. Through engagement, through having that highly qualified teacher in the room who could provide just-in-time instruction, as well as the paraprofessional in the room to guide students and help them understand the technology and provide that classroom management. We did see some interesting data, especially at like Langston Hughes High School, where the proximity learning classrooms, some of those students did outperform some of our regular classrooms. One of the things that we really sought to implement was parent communication. So some of our schools did try to start bridging that gap by holding parent symposiums to talk about what proximity was. And some of those parents were skeptical, but at the end, there was a lot of good qualitative feedback from those parents about the benefits of proximity learning and how they enjoyed the program. And as we moved into, really the end of last year into this year, some of those principals who were interested and who had integrated more from kind of a volunteering perspective had really become adopters and supporters of the program. So we're not done, and we still have plans for expansion. So we've continued some of that outreach using data, identifying our schools that have potential long-term vacancies in our middle and high school classrooms. And beyond just looking at our high-risk environments, also looking at some of our very high-performing schools. And, where the, hold on one second.
Geffen has made its last walkthrough through the school before open house. Please do not put any more trash, furniture, or anything out in the hallways. We want it to look nice for open house.
Did everybody get that? You need to keep the hallways clear for open house. I kind of lost my train of thought there. Oh, as we move into some of the high-performing schools, we've started to really look at some possible district-wide solutions. So, like I mentioned, a course like Latin or some of our AP course offerings, which proximity learning has the ability to teach, how can we start to think about district-wide course offerings? And so potentially using proximity learning for a specific period of the day across multiple schools. So that's kind of the thinking about how we expand. And again, as we continue to roll out technology, infrastructure, and hardware, making sure that we're considering our blended options as we move forward in those capital planning discussions. So this hasn't had its it's definitely had its difficulties. Let me say it that way. So these are just some general things that we've heard from principals and even district administrators. That buy-in piece is huge, and this is different. It is not a traditional staffing route. It's the right work, and it is preparing kids for the environment that they will see post-secondary. But building that principal buy-in has continued to be a struggle. Where we did get traction, we've kept traction. But I would tell all of you, if you're trying to jump into virtual staffing, it can be a hard sell at the school level. And so I think, what you have to do to really demonstrate success is lay out a very clear roadmap about what to do, provide data that demonstrates the effect of that high quality teacher in the classroom, even if it is blended. And those are things that we were able to partner with proximity learning on to explain what the program was. And like I said, overlap their process with the Fultonized language so that our principals knew exactly what to do if they wanted to move forward with this. I'll say too, getting that district administrator buy-in. So our chief of human resources was able to jump in and really lean in to say that this was a good option. And we got proximity learning as a preferred contractor and got them through our bidding process to really eliminate some of that red tape that we would have to go through. So building that buy-in at the local school and really at the executive levels of your district are huge. So I think this goes without saying. We've continued to push the idea that we need to have highly qualified teachers in front of our kids, because the effect of having them in front of a sub or sometimes no teacher at all for long durations of time can be detrimental. And that's why it was so alluring to work with proximity learning, because all of their teachers are certified. They're accredited through the Advanced Ed reaccreditation. They're accredited through NCAA Clearinghouse, and they're all master's level. And so, thinking about that level of credentials versus substitute was a no-brainer for us. So, I've mentioned their name before. I can't speak enough about proximity learning and their flexibility to work with us to make sure that we could implement this the right way. And not just working with me, working with principals, working with our IT and student information system staff, and our academics folks to make sure that we had standard alignment, standards pacing, curriculum spacing, all lined up. Proximity learning just continues to demonstrate flexibility and professionalism in how we were integrating these virtual staffing solutions in our school. That's just about it for my presentation. I know some of you probably have questions. Here's my contact information. moregr@fultonschools.org if you want to talk about anything Fulton or some of the virtual staffing implementation we did or any other staffing initiatives. Feel free to reach out. My cell number's there as well. If you could do me a favor, try not to call me this afternoon as I got open house to attend to. So I got to go make sure that no one's putting trash in the hallways, as you heard in the announcement. If you want to contact Proximity Learning, here's the people you need to talk to. I've worked very closely with Jim Frenchak, and he's been fantastic, very flexible. And these are school first people. Is probably the biggest thing that I would say. They're very attuned to the challenges that we all face, and have demonstrated outrageous and really just amazing flexibility to make this work for us. So that's it for the presentation. Molly, I know you said you wanted to jump in and open it up for questions, so I'm happy to do that if we want to jump into that at this point.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. While you are typing questions into your section or your control panel on the right-hand side, I'll just remind you that this webinar has been approved for both HRCI and SHRM for 1 hour of recertification credit, and you will receive that information later this afternoon via email. This webinar is also being recorded, and that, along with Ryan's presentation, will be under the members only side of the ASPA website, and that should be up within the next 24 hours or so. There aren't any questions coming in, so Ryan, you must have been very thorough. I'll give it another couple seconds as people type in. All right, our first question is, how did you handle teachers who are not state certified teaching courses?
So if they were teachers from other states, is that the question?
Yes.
So one of the beauties of, and this, this is my home state in Georgia, and I hate to dig on us, but one of the beauties of being 48th in the nation around performance in education is that we have reciprocity with almost everyone. So that hasn't posed an issue. I don't know if Jim wants to jump in and talk about how they've been able to make that work, not just in Fulton, but across some other districts as well.
We do have reciprocity in a lot of states. However, if there are certain states that say it must be, we will certified in their state, we will look for a teacher in that state. Right now, we have over 600 applicants from all across the country and all the different states that we could probably find a teacher for the state that is certified in those states. Florida is one of those, for instance. However, if we can't find one, we will bring that teacher in and we will get them certified in that state. Some of our teachers have 8, 10, 12, 13, 14 different state certifications, and we will ensure the fact that they will be certified if they currently are not certified.
How are special education classes handled virtually with regard to teaching an IEP?
So in Fulton, at least, we have not touched special education yet. So we did put some parameters on our schools. We told all of our principals at the middle and high school level that this is a middle and high school option for both core curriculum as well as world language. I will say that we did at Tri-Cities High School had proximity learning teachers teach some AP courses. We're waiting on some of that data to get back, but we did receive a lot of very positive qualitative data about that experience for our kids. But we did tell them to stay away from courses like ESOL, special education, some of those special federal grant funded areas we have not touched. That's not to say that we're not going to go there. As special ed continues to be one of our biggest vacancy and staffing needs in the district, conversations are underway to figure out how we could potentially integrate special education using proximity learning. And I know Jim can speak to this, but their teachers handle everything on the special education side. They review IEPs, sit in on those IEP meetings. They just do it virtually. So I'll let Jim jump in and talk about a little bit more about special ed programming if there's something I didn't hit.
It's a very good question. The special ed is a little bit different than the regular teachers from the standpoint of the IEPs. So our teachers will actually sit in the meetings, as Ryan said, and actually help write the IEPs with the district as well as the parents. Secondly, we will work with a coach. This is not a push-in program. It would have to be a pull-out program in a resource room, where we'll work with those students. And we don't work with students other than level 1 and level 2. We don't go much higher than that for obvious reasons. And the last thing we'll do is we'll do the parent-teacher meetings. We'll do them virtually. I've seen it where a young student will come in and say, look, mommy, this is my teacher. And they'll communicate back and forth as if it was a regular teacher. The only thing they can't do is handshake. And the last thing we'll do is we'll provide all of the state reporting and turn it in for the district so that there's no state reporting that needs to be done from the district. We'll handle all of that.
Which is the most common subject area and grade level that is taught via virtual teaching?
So in Fulton, we've been kind of all over the board. So at Tri-Cities, the courses were in the humanities areas, but math as well. So I'd say majority has been in math. Langston Hughes had multiple subjects being taught in their math department. We were astounded when we started to look at data that they had 13 vacancies in math and science, and that was in September of last year. So that's where we really pulled them in. That was a real 5-alarm fire for us to say, look, we need to get some teachers in these classrooms. And so that's where we've seen a lot of success. At Creekside High School in Northview, we jumped more into the world language curriculum. So it's been across the board, world language, math, and then some of the humanities courses as well. But I can tell you that we've had questions, and as long as we can give them some standards, Proximity said that they can get a teacher for anything. They do offer their own curriculum and pacing. What we've done in Fulton is, as we've made decisions using proximity learning, we've provided our standards and pacing from the central learning office. And the proximity learning teacher has used that to guide their instruction.
Yeah, our experience has been for the last 2 years that math and science, both in the middle school and high school, has been the highest call for us. Second, very close behind that is special ed, and third is world languages. We have started a couple elementary school openings that were filled this past year, several of them actually, and that has proved to be exceptionally positive, especially if you have a teacher, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, that's looking to become certified. Our certified teacher can help that teacher become certified. And it's very important that we believe that you have a highly qualified, certified teacher in front of those students, so there's equity across the district, and also we're delivering the best content possible. Now, that being said, again, to Ryan's point, if we'll use your curriculum, we'll use the district's curriculum. However, most of the districts we work with right now do not have their curriculum online. So they'll give us their scope and sequence, and we'll put our curriculum together in their scope and sequence, meet with the chief academic officers in the school district or instructional people, and ensure the fact that, yes, this is what we want to teach. And then we move forward from there.
There are different definitions or modalities for blended learning. Can you describe what style of blended learning you have in your district?
Yeah, so all of our schools, and I'll let Jim talk a little bit about how we kind of set it up and what their different options are. But we did the 3-day option where 3 of the days there's some direct instruction with the teacher using the technology tools, and then 2 of the days are work days where the virtual teacher could jump in and provide individualized instruction, but those were kind of considered work days with access to the teacher. They have a range of options and packages, but that's where we went, was the 3-day kind of direct lesson, and not that it was all direct instruction, but where it was real face-to-face time with the teacher, and then 2 days where it was work days facilitated by the teacher and the paraprofessional in the room.
Yeah, that has been the sweet spot, 3 days of instruction. We can do 2 days of instruction, but the concern from many districts has been it's not enough instruction time. We also have done 4 and 5 days. We had one school district do 5 days this past year, and they said it's too much instruction. The kids were just sitting there listening and not really participating. So 3 days seems to be the sweet spot. 3 days of instruction, live, just in time. 1 day for assignments. We don't give assignments outside the classroom because everything's online, and rather than embarrass a student because he or she doesn't have either one-to-one technology or technology outside of the school, or doesn't have internet connection at home, or whatever it might be, we don't want to embarrass them. So all of the assignments are done in class, which includes project-based learning. We'll do a lot of project-based learning depending on what the directive is from the chief academic officer in the school district. And that has proven to be very successful. The 5th day is what we call a flex day. If our teacher sees after quizzes and homework assignments are turned in that there are several students that just don't know how to do linear equations in Algebra 1, our teacher will identify those students, ask them to meet for the first 15 or 20 minutes on the flex day, and he or she will tutor 1 on 3, 1 on 6, 1 on 26 if we needed to. The students that are not involved in tutoring continue their assignments. And that has really proven to be we believe to be very successful, because it helps us differentiate the instruction so that not one student falls through the cracks. So we have an 85% pass rate with a 70% cut score. And we attribute to the fact that we do a lot of that tutoring, which helps the students, and they get it. Each student has a headset with a microphone, which is very important because it just disregards all that ambient noise outside that's normally in a classroom, and they have a much better propensity to focus in on what the teacher is teaching. And the teacher can turn on and off the sound, much like we've turned off the sound for everybody on this webinar, so that they can really communicate to the student. And the teacher sees all of our students, and the student sees the teacher. And that's the basic premise on how the classroom is set up as well.
How well were the world language courses received?
Well, I mean, that was a huge success. I mean, when I tell you about the high performance expectations at Northview High School, our state reporting, obviously gives school a grade, but this is a school that scored 101.4 on the state report card because of the high level of academic achievement, as well as the innovative programs where they could earn extra points. And so we had concerns going in that how are we going to get proximity up and running in a high-performing school like Northview High School. But like I said, proximity learning took over the entire Latin program, and that's not a small program. In that high-performing environment, a lot of students are taking Latin to start preparing them for pre-law and pre-med as they move into post-secondary options. And it went very well. Parents were satisfied. We received a lot of qualitative feedback from them, and our students continued to perform very well, using the proximity learning option. The Spanish 2 program, very similar. And as we talked with the principal at Creekside this last year, as he started to look at potentially expanding beyond world language and into some of his math and science vacancies, he indicated too that his Spanish courses taught by proximity learning outperformed the Spanish courses taught by his regular teacher or by the regular teacher on staff. And so a lot of success there. And that's really a big focus area. As Jim mentioned, that they've been pulled from math, science, special ed, and world language. It's the same three for us, maybe in a little bit of a different order, with special ed being up top. But world language is an area we look to continue to expand that focus on this option.
How are the
I think it probably helps. I was going to say, I think it probably helps too that we started in 2009. World language was where we started. We started with Mandarin Chinese because in 2009 we thought with China buying all kinds of businesses and land in the United States that we at least wanted to say hello in Chinese to them when they took over. But that worked out really well, and we expanded to 4 or 5 or 6 other languages. We have 8 or 9 right now for world languages, and that has been a very, very active area all across the country for us to provide quality world language teachers.
How are the proximity teachers evaluated in regards to student success?
Jim, I'll let you jump in and talk about that.
Sure. We do a number of evaluations, free and reduced lunch, Title I, schools, advanced schools, higher performing schools. So we have quite a matrix of how we come up with, how well these teachers do. But they have to have a certain pass rate in order for them to, stay with us, because the list is long as to who wants to be with us. And I think we lost only 2 teachers out of 150 plus last year who just decided this wasn't for them, and that's fine. But we have Dr. Keith Lockwood, who is from Columbia Teachers College in New York, and he does all of our evaluations. And the evaluations are based on a number of different ways. Number one is we do 2 formal evaluations. He will call and he'll say, okay, Jim, on Thursday, August 3rd, at 12 o'clock noon, I'm going to evaluate you. And you won't see me because I'm in the back of the classroom and I'm in there virtually, but you just do what you need to do. And then 4 times out of the year, he will evaluate me. I won't even know that he's in the class. And it really makes it nice too, because we'll allow principals to do the same thing. We'll give them a username and password. And if they have 15 minutes or 10 minutes at the end of a period or beginning of a class period, and they would like to see how our teacher's doing, how the kids are doing, they can go in. We don't mind that at all. But that's part of the evaluation process we do. All of our teachers are certified in their area, and all of our teachers are master's degree and have more than 5 years teaching experience. I hope that answers their question.
What is the cost for 180 days?
So I'm going to let Jim talk about the pricing, but I do want to say this about budget, and I'm glad that it got brought up because I wanted to make sure we talked about it. So as many of you know, the cost of a master's level teacher certified with 5 years experience, all that is averaged when principals have to do their budgets and their staffing. So what that teacher gets paid and what that allocation looks like on your actual staffing report are a little different. So on the staffing report, I think our expense for a teacher with a master's degree to a school, I think is around $55,000. That's what the average cost, that's what that allocation would actually cost. We were getting the proximity learning teacher for around $48,000, running a 6-period schedule for the dates and times, like Jim said, with the 3 direct instruction days and the 2 work days. So I'll let Jim go a little more into their pricing, but that was a huge pull for our principals because they were able to cash out a vacancy and still be able to pay for the proximity learning teacher and use some of those other excess funds because of how much the vacancy cost to pay for the paraprofessional as well.
Yeah, we found that on average across the country, now it may be low in some places and high in other places, but this was the average across 23, 24 different states that we were in last year. We'll take the new average this coming year because we've expanded into other states. But the average cost for a teacher with a master's degree and more than 5 years teaching experience was around between $49,000 and $51,000. And then you add on to that all of the benefits, the unemployment taxes, all of the things that have to be, and it comes out to be between $60,000 to $70,000 that you're actually paying through the district for a teacher to teach those classes. We charge between $48,000 and $50,000 depending on the class. Usually right now it's about $8,400 for a class for the whole year. And what's really nice about that is if you need a .2 teacher, it's really tough to find them. If you want somebody to just teach 2 periods or 3 periods, class periods a day, we'll do that. And it'll be just that cost. And what's nice about our cost, there are no additional charges. We take care of all their benefits. We pay all of their insurance. Everything is covered by proximity so that the price is what the price is. And generally, we find a lot of districts have a lot of extra money, as Ryan was saying, to hire that teaching assistant. We have a number of school districts because in most states, the person in the classroom manager, if you will, or facilitator doesn't have to be certified. They'll hire a lot of college students and give them a internship and pay them money to be able to run that class and be able to see how well they do. And oftentimes the district will hire that person in the fall for the following school year because they've done well. But there's generally money left over after it's all said and done because you don't have to pay all those extra things as far as benefits and taxes and so forth. So between $48,000 and $50,000 for a year between a 6-7 period class, depending on how many class periods you have during the day.
Has there been any pushback from the teachers union, or is Fulton not a union environment?
So Georgia as a whole is not a union state. So we have a union that's really is more there for liability coverage for teachers. We do not have a strong union presence at all. So no pushback.
Yeah, that's a really good question because I do work in places like New York State and Connecticut and Massachusetts and Ohio and Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Delaware. A lot of those states have adopted the blended learning approach. I'm working with several school districts in New York State now that are doing and referring to this as distance learning. And there are a lot of school districts where, because it's web-based or online, if you have 3 school districts that need calculus and they have 4 kids in each of 3, you have 12 students, you're not going to hire a teacher for 4 students. They'll do a distance learning. Well, we're going to be a part of that distance learning. We'll do all 4 schools or 3 school districts with 4 kids in each one. And as long as they're scheduled at the same time, we'll do 3 days of instruction, a day of flex, and a day of assignments. I have a number of states that are referring to us because the online program has been accepted by unions. We're calling this interactive online curriculum, so that we'll put all of our curriculum online, and you need a teacher for instruction because NCAA requires, if you have online courses right now, they require a teacher instructing for 20% of the time, or 1 day per week. And some of the online providers are saying, oh, as long as you have discussion boards, that's the same thing. Well, right now it's being slipped by NCAA, but you want to be a little careful because you got to have a live teacher. Now, some districts send live teachers in to the class, and whether they're instructing or not, I'm not sure, but they're there saying that they have 1 day of instruction, and that's fine. But that's how we go ahead and communicate it in states that have high unions. And what I'm finding is that because of the teacher shortage is such at a high level right now, Ed Week said this past year that there were 60,000 vacancies that never did get filled across the country. They're projecting 75,000 for next year and 100,000 by 2019. So I think the unions are recognizing, it's great to have those, and we've been talking with them as well. But what are we going to do? You can't get the teachers. We've got to find somebody to fill that slot, and that's what we're working on. You put a sub in there, that's fine too, but they're not a part of the teachers union in most states. So that's how we work in the states that have the unions. And we do have an asynchronous program where all of our teachers have been recorded. You're not getting a lot of drill and kill. You're not getting a lot of drag and drop and multiple guesses and true and false and that kind of stuff. You actually have a teacher, highly qualified teacher, instructing on the asynchronous side as well as the synchronous side.
What about teachers who are trained to teach IB courses?
We haven't gone there. Again, I'm going to defer to Jim. I know that they offer courses in the IB curriculum, but we have not used IB teachers yet.
Okay, we do have IB teachers. Matter of fact, the schools districts, a lot of them out of Michigan actually, that use our IB teachers, we have a 100% pass rate. So we do have IB teachers. We'll make sure that they are exactly what you're looking for as far as the requirements that each state needs for their IB teacher.
All right, it looks like those are all of the questions that we have today. Thank you for joining us for Help Wanted. Are you scrambling to find teachers? Look out for an email that contains the recertification information and a copy of today's presentation. That completes this webinar. Thank you, Ryan and Jim, and all of our attendees.